We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 7a. The Gemara says, Ilya v'Tuvya karive da'ar v'havi. Ilya and Tuvya, they were relatives of a guarantor on a particular loan. Savar Apapa Lamemar Apapa thought to say, Gabe lova umalve rechike ninu. With regards to the actual borrower and lender, they're rechike, they're actually not related, and so therefore they should be able to testify in this case. The fact that they're related to the guarantor should not matter. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Huna B'rei Rav Yoshua le Rav Papa. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, said to Rav Papa, Iles leila lov, if the borrower does not have money, lav basar arva azal malva, doesn't the lender go after the guarantor, and therefore the guarantor is a party in this transaction, he's a party in this loan, and therefore they cannot testify in this case. Rashi says, Ilya v'Tuvya eidei halva hayu, they were witnesses on the loan, krovin el ha'arev, and they were close, they were relatives to the guarantor. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Misha Nigmar Dino Uvarach, somebody who has a Gemar Dina verdict, and he runs away. Ubalif Neoso Bez, and then he comes back in front of that very same court. Ein Sosern as Dino, we don't go back and retry the case. Kol Makom Sheyamdu Shnayim, anytime the two people stand up, V'yomer, and they say, Mi'idim Anu B'ish Ploni, Shenigmar Dino Bebezin Shal Ploni Uploni, they say, we testify that so-and-so had a verdict in a particular court, Uploni Uploni Eidav, and so-and-so and so-and-so were the witnesses, Hareza Yehareg, that is enough that the person is put to death. And the Mishnah continues, Sanhedrin noheges ba'aretz uv'chutz la'aretz, the Sanhedrin, it applies both in Eretz Yisrael and outside of Eretz Yisrael. Sanhedrin ha'oreges echad b'shavua nikres chovlonis, a Sanhedrin that kills once every 7 years, that's already called a destructive Sanhedrin, a bloody Sanhedrin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says echad l'shivim shana, once every 70 years. Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, they say, ilu hayinu b'Sanhedrin, if we were in the Sanhedrin, lo nereg adam me'olam, no one would ever be killed. We would always find a way to make the person innocent. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, afein marbin shofchei damim b'Yisrael, that would increase murderers in Klal Yisrael, because people would know that they can get off, that they would end up not being punished. And Rashi explains, Lifnei Oso Bezdin, before that Bezdin, he runs away, and then he comes back to the court, Sheneschaibo, the very same court which he was held liable. Ein Sosrin Lachzer Velisa Velite, we're not going to go over the case again. Ulai Yizka, that maybe we'll find him innocent. We will not do that. Ilu Hayinu, and then there was a statement by Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva, if we, B'yomim Shesanhedrin Donu Din Nefashos, if we were around in the times when the Sanhedrin judged capital cases, Lo Nereg Ba'adam, no one would be killed. Kidim Mefarish B'Gemara, as the Gemara will explain, that they would examine the witnesses in a way that they wouldn't know how to answer, and that would make the defendant would be considered innocent. And then the response of Rishon ben Gamliel was, if they did that, nobody would be afraid of the courts, and that would actually increase the amount of murderers. And the Gemara says, Lifnei Oso Bezdin Hudein Sosrin. It sounds like our Mishnah is saying that if he comes in front of the same court, they don't retry the case. Halifnei Bezdin Acher, but if he runs in front of another court, Sosrin, it sounds like they would retry the case. And the Gemara continues, Hatani Seifa. But we learned at the end of the Mishnah goes on to say, Kol Makom Sheyamdu Shnayim v'yomru Me'idin Anu Esish Ploni, Shenigmar Dino Bebezdin Ploni Uploni Eidav. If two people stand up and they say, we testify about a certain person that there was a verdict against him in a different court, and so and so are the witnesses, Harez Nereg, the person would be killed. It sounds like we do not retry the case. And the Gemara says, Amar Abaya says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan be'eretz Yisrael, kan b'chutz la'aretz. In one case we're talking about in Eretz Yisrael, in the other case we're talking about in chutz la'aretz, Titania. As we learned in the Brais, Rabbi Yehuda ben Dustoi, Omer Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach. Rabbi Yehuda ben Dustoi says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, Barach me'aretz l'chutz la'aretz. If somebody flees from Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'aretz, ein sosern as dino. There we don't retry the case. Chutz la'aretz, but if he flees from chutz la'aretz, from outside of Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, then sosern as we do retry the case, and the reason is mipnei zechusa shel Eretz Yisrael, because of the merit of Eretz Yisrael. Rashi explains, mipnei zechusa shel Eretz Yisrael ulai toel limtzo lo pesach shel zechus. Maybe the zechus of Eretz Yisrael will help to find some reason for innocence. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Sanhedrin noheges, it says the Sanhedrin applies both in Eretz Yisrael and also outside of Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says, Menahani Mili, from where do we know this? Titanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, V'hayu elo lachem lechukas mishpat l'dorosechem. It says they will be for you for a judgment for all generations. Lamanu l'Sanhedrin shenoheges ba'aretz uv'chutz la'aretz. That teaches that the Sanhedrin it can act both in Eretz Yisrael and in chutz la'aretz. Imkein matam alomer b'sharech. If so, why does it say in your gates? It sounds like we're only talking about in Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara explains, B'sharecha, in your gates, Ata Moshe Batei Dinim B'chol Plach U'Plach U'V'chol Ir V'Ir. When it comes to B'sharecha, in your gates, when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, we have courts in every single province, in every single city. U'V'chutz La'aretz Ata Moshe B'chol Plach U'Plach. When it comes to Chutz La'aretz, every province gets a court. V'Ata Moshe B'chol Ir V'Ir. But you don't put in every single city. And we will note that the Gemara brought the pasuk of V'Hayu Eila as a proof that the Sanhedrin is nohegas both in Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. The full pasuk over there is V'Hayu Eila Lachem L'chugas Mishpah L'Dorosechem B'chol Mosh V'Osechem. It says in all of your dwelling places. That's the source again that it applies in Chutz La'aretz as well. And Rashi explains Matam Alomer B'Sharecha. Why does it say in your gates Shoftim V'Shotrim Titen L'chutz? As you're going to have judges, you're going to have officers in all of your gates. And the difference is that Ata Moshe Ata Chayiv Loshe B'chol Plach U'Plach Plach HaPrachi. Again, you're going to be Chayiv in Eretz Yisrael to do it not only in every plach, not only in every district, but also in every single city. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Sanhedrin ha'oregis. The Mishnah said if it kills every 7 years, it's called chavlonis. And then there was another opinion in the Mishnah, once every 70 years. And the Gemara says, Iboilahu, they had the following question, Achas l'shivim shana, nikris chavlonis. Is it that once every 70 years, that opinion is saying that's considered a destructive bezdin? O Dilmar, maybe orach arahi. Maybe it's saying that once every 70 years is the normal. That's what a normal bezdin would kill. And the Gemara says, take what the Gemara leaves that as a question. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva, Omrim, Rabbi Tarfon, and Rabbi Akiva, they say, Ilu hayinu v'chulu, if we were around at the time that the Sanhedrin was taking cases that involved the death penalty, nobody would have been given the death penalty. And the Gemara says, Heichi hava avdi, well, what exactly would they have done? What kind of questions would they have asked the witnesses? And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Da'amri Tarvayu, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar, they both say that they would ask them as follows, Re'isim treifa harag or shalom harag? Did you see that the person was killed? Was he a treifa? Was he shalom? Did he have mortal wounds or not? If he was a treifa, then essentially the person that was killed was already dead, and the person who did the killing would not be liable to the death penalty. And Amar Rav Ashi says, even if you say you examined the body and you found that there was no injury, but Dilma b'makom sayif nekaf hava, maybe in the exact place where the sword went when the person killed this person, maybe in that place there already was a mortal wound, there already was a hole, so to speak, in that area, and so therefore again he's already considered like he's dead, and the person who did the killing would not be liable to the death penalty in that case. And the Gemara continues, what would they do in a case of an illicit relationship, a case of arayas? What would they ask the witnesses in order to get the people who were involved in the act out of the death penalty? Abaye v'Rava da'amri tarvayu, Abaye and Rava, they both say, re'isam kemechol b'shvoferes. They would ask the witnesses, did you see it up close like you see a brush go into a tube? Did you see it so close that you're certain that they committed an act of relations? And so therefore, of course, the answer would be no, and that's why they would not be put to death. Now the Gemara says, but the Rabbanan, how did they judge the case? What would they ask the witnesses? Don't the witnesses have to see the action in order for the defendants to be liable to the death penalty? And the Gemara says, not necessarily, Kishmuel, it could be like Shmuel says. Shmuel says, we understand by the cases of adultery, it has to just look like they're committing the adultery. As long as that's what it looks like, that is good enough. Hadran aloch Ketzar ha'edim, we will return to you, Parak Ketzar ha'edim. This is the end of the first parak of Meseches Makkos. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the second parak of Meseches Makkos. And the parak begins with the Mishnah, Elohein Hagolin, the following are exiled, Hahoreg Nefesh Bishkaga, somebody who kills someone by mistake. And the Mishnah explains, Hayamagil b'magil, if somebody is rolling the roller on his roof, V'nafla olav haragto, and then it falls on a person and it kills him. Hayamishalshal b'chavis, or he's lowering a barrel, V'nafla olav haragto, and it falls on the person and it kills him. Hayayored b'sulam, if he's going down a ladder, V'nafal olav haragto, and he falls on somebody and he kills him. Hareza Gol, in all of these cases, he's going to be exiled. Avolim Hayamoshe, but let's say he's pulling the roller, and it falls on the person and kills him. Or let's say he's pulling the barrel upward, and then the rope snaps and it falls on the person and it kills him. And Rashi explains, Hayamagil b'magila, again, he's rolling the roller. Tachin hayugagosein betit. They used to have tit, they used to have a certain kind of mortar that they used for the roofs. V'hagagos lo hayu mishupoin, and their roofs, they weren't slanted. Aval hatit mashpiin ma'at, but the mortar would be a little bit slanted, kadeshi zovu hamayim, in order for the water to flow off. V'tachin osam b'chatichas eitzava v'chalaka uva beisyad, and they had this instrument with a handle that they would use, v'dochvel etzad hashipur, they would push it towards the slant, v'chos V'chozer moshcha elav, and then they would draw it back to themselves. V'chozer v'dochva, and then they would do that again. V'hatit mismareach u'machlik, and that's how they would smooth out the mortar. V'dchifaso koreu ma'agol v'mishichaso koreu moshech. When they would push it forward, that would be called ma'agel, and when they drew it back, when they pulled it back, that's called moshech. V'shem ha'etz ma'agila, and the name of this roller was a magila. Hayamishal shel chavis, the person's lowering a barrel min hagag from the roof. Hayayored, if the person's going down a ladder. Hahoreg besulam, the person who commits the murder, he's going down the ladder. V'nafal min hasulam, he falls from the ladder. V'hareg, and he kills begufo es chavero, he kills with his body his friend. Gola, he goes to Golus. And Rashi explains the principle, the chol hani derech yeridin. In all of these cases, it's a downward motion that's happening, and then comes the killing by mistake. V'gabe Golus derech yerida, but when it comes to exile, it needs to be in a downward motion. Kedemefarish beGemara, as the Gemara is going to explain, vayapil ola from the pasuk. Aval haya moshech, but again, if he's pulling it, v'nishmeta magila miyado v'nafla, and then the magila slips from his hand and it falls. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Zayin Amid Beis.